It's time to build some frame rails for the 280Z. If you want to see how we do that, stick around. Morning everybody, it's Brian, back with Block Garage. We're back out in the garage today to work on the 280Z. It's a cold one out today. I think it was like 5 out or so when I got up. I've got the fire cranking over there. It's been running for, I don't know, hour and a half maybe, something like that. Got it up to 40 in here. So not real warm yet, but got to get started and get to work or we'll never get anything done. So in the last couple of videos, we got a bunch of work done. The car now has solid floor pans and seat mounts. So now it's time we got to get underneath the car and put some new frame rails on it. As you can see, I've got the car back up on the rotisserie. It hasn't been up on here for a while. I made some modifications yesterday to it. My pivot point used to be right up here. This is where the car would swing back and forth on these uprights. I moved it down, I think 4.5 inches, something like that, because previously the car was too bottom heavy. It was a bit tough to get it to rotate up and around to get it on its side or upside down. You know, it was doable, you could do it. It was quite heavy. This more balances out the center of gravity, so there's just a little bit of extra weight at the bottom to keep it setting on its bottom at normal times. I didn't want it top heavy and have the car trying to roll over when I get it set like this. And it is so much easier to use now. Very happy I did this. So yeah, let me show you. I'll show you just how much easier this thing is to rotate over. See, almost no effort at all. Before I used to have to get some help to rotate it up around, but it's almost effortless at this point. All right, before we start doing those frame rails, I got some cleanup work to do. I haven't done any welding or grinding or anything underneath these floor pans from when I put them in, because you know the car was sitting down low on the ground and I wasn't doing that laying on my back. So I need to go around, clean all of this up. You know I want to do all of my stitch welding along the floor pan, you know, all along here, just like I did on the top side. So I got to do that. Have a bunch of grinding to do. So before we get started on the frame rails, I'm gonna go and do that. And I'm not gonna bother recording it. You guys have seen it a bunch already. There's no point in boring you. So I'll do that. And once I get it all cleaned up and ready to go, I will catch back up with you guys and we'll start on the frame rails. All right, I've been working out here quite a bit on this, getting this all ready to go. I've actually been out most nights this week for an hour or so after work, just plugging away at getting this all smoothed out. So we got everything all done, everything smoothed out. I did my stitch welding all along here. I stitch welded all along here, just like the other side up front. I still have some cleanup to do up in this area. This is where I repaired the firewall. Obviously you can see the new panel here. Most of this here is just patches. And honestly, this side looked a lot worse than I was expecting, just because of how much I had to weld on the inside of the car and I kept blowing through. So it's taken me quite a bit to get it to where it is. I need to finish it up, but it's time to move on. I'll get that later. I want to get these frame rails in. So that's what we're going to do now. This is my old frame rail here that came out of this side. You know, went just here like this. See, it ends at the back. And we are going to completely make that stronger. What we're using is this 2.5 inch square tubing. Basically, I'm going to take that, I'm going to lay it on here, get it all cut out. I'm basically going to slice it in half, contour it to the floor here. And we're also going to tie in back here. It's going to come down here. It's going to tie into this little frame section back here where the rear differential and suspension and all that stuff bolts to. Because from what I've read, this right here is a weak point in the car and it flexes there quite a bit. So if we tie the front to the rear, it's going to help a lot. But to get started, I need to cut off this piece here of that front frame rail went here and kind of sandwiches around the frame rail in the engine bay. So I need to pop this off before we can get started. So I'm gonna go and do that right now. All right, take a look inside this frame rail. If you can see in there, down in the end, there's a block off plate of some kind for I'm guessing it's for support for where the arm comes off the suspension here to give this strength. And that is not all the way down here at the end. It's right about here-ish. So it looks solid in there, so I think I want to leave that. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop out these, so basically what I'm going to do is pop out these spot welds right here, up to right about where that is, trim it off, all the way across here, and then I will pop these spot welds off here, peel that off, and I will probably leave this section from here up as is. But that's the tentative plan now. We'll see what happens when I get it apart. So here's what it looks like underneath. You can see it's all nice and solid. There's no rot or anything underneath here. Very happy about that. I've seen some that are terrible and you got to cut all this out. So very big thing. So right now I need to clean that up. Obviously I'm not going to weld a new piece on there with it all rusty like that. So I'm going to clean that up. I've actually got a new tool that'll help with that a bit. I'm going to clean it up with my cleanup discs that I've been doing with my die grinder, but then I'll bust that other tool out and show you it. I tried it once and it works very nice. All right, so that works very well, obviously. We got it all nice and cleaned up, but I bought this a couple weeks ago. It's a mini sandblaster. They're cheap. I got this for 30 bucks at Harbor Freight, and it actually works quite well. So, I have a full-size sandblaster. It's so messy. So this is great for small little areas like this where you can't quite clean up, with anything else easily. So I'll get these little areas in here and in the corners and stuff like that, and this will be perfectly ready to go. Works very well. I mean, it still does make a mess, right? Because you still got sandblasting all over the place. But it's not nearly as bad as, full-size sandblaster. It's great for little spots like that. So now we just gotta get this ready to go, and we will start on our frame rail. Got this all cleaned up here, ready to go. I did some stitch welding along here and a little bit along here. She's ready to go. So now we gotta start building our frame rail from the front to the back. And as you can see, this floor is nowhere near flat. This side, my frame rail, you would think is going to sit right in here, this groove. It does not. One side goes down here and will be nice and flat. The other side goes right along here and goes up all over these bumps all the way to the back. So it's not going to be super easy to cut, but I think I've got a good idea. I saw this from another guy that's building frame rails on his 280Z, or I don't know if it's 280, 240, doesn't really matter. I can't remember his YouTube channel name, but I'll throw it up on the screen. So what we're gonna do is I've got my old frame rail right here. As you can see, this side is, nowhere near straight. It goes up and down over those bumps. All I've done is just started, so I'll get it set on top. It's gonna go, my frame rail is gonna match up to this exactly, obviously, so it's gonna meet with the floor. So every time we've got a peak or a valley here in the cut, I'm gonna make a vertical line, and then I'm gonna measure how far from the bottom to this peak is right here, and then I'm going to put a mark right here on my line like I did, and then this low spot right here, I'm going to measure from here to here. We're going to put another mark right there, and then I know for this angle right here, I cut straight across there. Then I'm going to do probably one down here, because this is the next spot. It's nice and straight from here to here. I'll put another mark right here wherever this is, and we'll get a line right there to there. That way I've got basically this whole thing will have the lines drawn in it, and then I'll just cut it out with my cutoff disc. The other side will be super easy because this side's nice and straight. And once I get this side cut off, then we can do the other side, trim it down. We'll basically pop the top of this off that we've cut off, and this piece that's still left down here will be our new frame rail, and it should, in theory, set right on the floor. All right, got that all marked out. Let's take a look. So it's a bit hard to see, but we got the line right here, all the way down where I need to cut. Matches up with here. And then I marked the other side also. That side's nice and straight, so I don't have to worry about that too much. But yeah, I'm gonna go cut it out and we'll see if it fits. So here's what we're left with. In theory, this should fit right on our floor pan right now. So it's very close. We're touching at the front, we're touching at the rear, but we got a bit of a gap in the middle. And it's not just on this side, so I didn't just cut this side wrong. There's a gap up here too. So my guess is that when I put that floor in, it's got a bit of a curve to it in the middle. So all I should have to do is just suck that down where it's gotta go. Now hopefully, since I put those seat mounts in, that's not gonna keep me from pulling it down as much as I need. But we'll see. I'm gonna mess around with it for a little bit, see if I can't get this fitting perfect, and we'll go from there. What I found for getting this square with the car, since I don't have anything to measure off, I don't have the other frame rail on there or anything, I found that this pinch weld is not the same distance at the front to the rear. It's actually a bit wider at the rear. So we got this frame kind of running perpendicular with the car at the rear. So I'm just using a square off of that to get this side square. All right, one thing we have to do is make sure that our frame rail isn't tilted this way or this way, you know. So the best thing that I found is I throw a level up here on my rotisserie, which I know is level with the car. So get that about level right about there. We'll put the level on here. And we are just about level. All we need to do is pick up this outside just a tiny bit. So it's close enough. I'm just gonna tack it by pushing up on it and we'll be good. Alright, if you guys can see underneath the car, I don't know how well it's showing up, but I've got a bit of a gap right here. It's not bad. I can't get the light to show me, but there's maybe 1/8 of an inch gap there. Right in the middle, and it's right about where my seat mount is, the front one. It's the front seat mount's right here. And the rest of it's good. You know what, the rest of it's good front and rear. And if I go out here, I got a decent gap up out here. And I don't think it's because I cut it bad. Measured off the old frame rail, which obviously, it's old, rusty. Not gonna be perfect for what we're doing, but I did not expect my gap to be that bad. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to push the floor down as much as I can to meet the inside edge where I get a gap, which will pull the outside edge down too. I'm guessing my floor's got a little bit of a curve to it in the middle. And it's gonna be a little tough to pull that down because I got the seat mounts in there. So if I was doing this again, I would not have put the seat mounts in first. I would have gone and done the frame rails, come back and done the seat mounts at another time. But I want to push that down, and it's not going to be real easy with those seat mounts in there and fully welded. So I've got a plan. I am going to use a bottle jack, and I'm not going to go off of here because these aren't real strong, and I don't want it to try to pull the car in anyway. These mounts out here for the doors are, I would assume, stronger because it's angle iron, nice and bolted front to rear. And I'm not going to put a ton of pressure on this. I'm going to put a beam side to side right where I need to push here. I'll go underneath and tack it so that it'll stay, and then we'll flip it back over and we'll fully weld it. All right, got it all tacked in. I got the car flipped back over. Got some nice tacks in it all the way along. It's not going to go anywhere. So I did push down on that floor some with my bottle jack to squeeze up the gap a little bit, but I barely put any pressure. I wasn't even using a handle or anything to put some force on the jack. Just my hand, a little wrist motion. So we're not done, not ready to fully weld this. Obviously, we need to make this part up here, which I made this piece extra long so I could cut it exactly where I wanted. Same thing back here. We're gonna have to cut it about here and go down here and box it in down there. So that's the next step. We'll get those pieces all made up and tack everything in place, and then we'll fully weld everything and be done with this side. All right, now we gotta cut out this piece here. I had this extra long because I didn't know how I was gonna do this piece on the end. I wanna make sure I had plenty there. But I decided to just cut this right off 90 degrees right here, right where it's gonna start bending down. I contemplated figuring out the angle that it should be to be right in between the bend. Like if let's say you're cutting two pieces of wood that are 90 degrees from each other, you'd cut this angle at 45, right? So I was trying to do that calculation here, and it just wasn't working out. So what I did is I just cut that off at a 90, and since my piece is not the full height right here, it's not the full 2.5 inches from the floor, I'm not gonna end up with it not sitting flush right here. And I figured the easiest thing to do would be to make a template. So I got this right here, super easy to make. I already transferred it onto my piece of square tubing over here. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut that out, and we'll see if it fits. Here's our piece all made up. Had to do a little bit of grinding to make it fit. Not much, just a little bit, but check it out. Fits in there perfectly. I'm gonna tack that piece in. I beveled my edges here so that I get some nice penetration with the weld, because I'm gonna be grinding this smooth so it looks nice. So yeah, I'm gonna tack that in, then we'll start working on the piece for the rear. All right, on the rear, I had to do a little bit of thinking. So this one up here, when I make my piece, it's gonna have my frame rail coming right back here. It's a nice straight piece. It's just gonna shoot down at an angle. Easy to make. But back here, if you remember, this side is not level with this side. It's kind of easy to see if you look from here. So the cut can't be just straight across because we'd have some weird gaps to fill in, and I'd rather not fill in weird gaps. So I'm gonna cut it right here at 90 degrees, just like I did the other side, because this is not taller than 2.5 inch. But what I did is, instead of cutting right down to here, you know, if I cut at 90 degrees to match this side, it would be up here about, what, like a 1/2 inch above. I just took my straight edge, and my piece is going to go like that. So I just drew a line right there where that goes. And I believe, as long as I just cut here, it should be easy to get a piece in there to match up with the other side and have everything square. That's the theory anyway. I'm going to go cut that, and we will see if that works out. So you can see we got a bit of a weird cut there, but I believe that'll work. I gotta get this cleaned up. Obviously all this undercoating on here can't weld through that, so I'm gonna get that all cleaned up, prepped up, ready to go, and then we'll start building our piece here. So here's what I came up with for a template. Pretty easy to do. Let's go transfer that to our square tubing and get that cut out. A little bit of grinding later, some primer on both of them, and we're ready to go. Since this slants down right here, I had to make a little patch to go in there. This little piece is just gonna get stuck right in there. I'm gonna go tack that in, and then we'll check it all out, make sure we're good, and if it is, we'll weld it in fully. And here we go. We got everything all tacked in. It's looking nice. I don't see any issues. Everything's nice and straight. My gaps aren't too bad. I do get some filling to do on the bottom when I fill that in, but really not that bad. Easily taken care of. So I'm gonna stitch weld this whole thing in, and we'll be done with this frame rail. And we're all done. I got everything cleaned up, ground down my welds so they look nice. So this frame rail is 100% done. Now we're gonna flip it over and we're gonna do the same thing on the other side. Alright, so this side is going to be basically the same as the other side, although it's going to be a little bit tougher to cut this one out because this side doesn't have the one side that is nice and flat like the passenger side had. But the process is going to be exactly the same. We're going to get this piece cut off that's still on here. We'll fabricate our rail to go front to back. We'll fill in up front, we'll fill in out back. Weld it in, frame rails will be all done. Since you just watched me do the passenger side, there's not really any point in watching me do the driver's side because it's the same process. So, we're gonna skip ahead. And we're all done. We got a nice new frame rail on this side, all fully welded in. Got a nice new frame rail on that side. So now the car's way stronger than it was before. Remember, the old frame rails were thin. They only ran back to right about here. We've got it connected into the rear frame now. So now the car is going to be way stiffer than it was before. And previously, when I did the other side, I only stitch welded it. I went back and I decided I wanted to fully seam weld the whole thing. So I did that top and bottom, all over the whole thing. So now the frame rails are fully 100% done. We don't have to worry about them anymore, and it's time to move on. One thing I think I would make for a change if I ever was doing this again is that I would not have welded the seat mounts in before I did the frame rails, because that really stiffened up the floor, and I could have, if the floor wasn't quite so stiff, would have been easier to close up any gaps between where I cut the frame rail and the bottom of the floor, and then I would have gone in and welded the seat mounts in after everything was done with the frame rails. But overall, it wasn't too bad. Everything should be right where it needs to be, and we should be good to go. So if anybody's doing frame rails on an old Datsun or anything, hopefully this will help you out. Maybe utilize some of the things I came up with and showed off during the video. But I'm gonna end this one off here, so leave some comments, like, subscribe, all that stuff. Let me know what you think of the frame rail project, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.